You're listening to Dating After DV. Real stories, expert insights, and deep healing from women who've been there. Together, we're breaking the silence, naming the patterns, and rising from toxic to true love. You're not starting over, you're starting stronger. With me, your host, Christy. Welcome back to Dating After DV. Today we have with us Stephanie McPhail, the Love and Life Success Coach. Stephanie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I found Stephanie online and I'm so excited to have a conversation with her today because she is one person like myself who has created her dream marriage after DV. Stephanie, would you tell us a bit of your story?
If you're listening to this, first of all, I just want you to have this first glimmer of hope that whatever you want is possible for you. I don't care what you've experienced. I don't care how long you've experienced, but that little light inside of you that's saying there's something more, listen to it because there is. And that's literally what guided me through it, is that I wasn't sure if things really could get better, but that was my hope, that I wanted to have that slight possibility and run with it with maybe if I get out of here, maybe things will get better. I was someone who just went from one toxic relationship to another one. I just felt like I had too high of expectations for what a relationship would be like. And I ended up marrying someone that I saw major red flags for. But I was at a point where I wanted to settle down. I was 28. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids. My friends were getting married. And I really had just never found anyone that was really the right fit for me. And I thought, again, like there's enough things that we have in common. We'll just see how it goes. He definitely pushed the relationship to go faster than I wanted to, even though I said I wasn't ready for him to move in. He wanted to move in more quickly. He wanted to hurry up the relationship, the marriage more quickly. He wanted to get married at a beautiful location at a castle, which I thought was beautiful, but I wanted to get married on the beach. And so I felt a little bit like, well, am I being just weird that I don't want to have this fairy tale wedding? And trigger warning, but he ended up strangling me on our wedding night. And it was hours of him chasing me, threatening me. And this place that he wanted so badly to get married at, he tried to kill me at. And he promised it would never happen again. It's never going to happen again. I was stressed. I was overwhelmed. And all the guilt, all the shame that I had about my family, my friends coming to this wedding, spending money, spending time, me spending all this money and time. I wanted to believe him. He promised it would never happen again. Within a few months, he was already back to doing all of it again. And so for the next several years, it just went back and forth. I'd throw him out. I would research, maybe if I changed something about me, maybe if I didn't have so many opinions, maybe if I didn't hang out with my friends as much, all these different things, maybe he'll get better. But he just kept being the same person. And when I finally did leave, I thought that I could go and just never do it again. I'm smart. I'm successful. I can do all these great things. I've been successful in my career, in everything else, my grades, my schoolwork. I can just research this. And actually things got worse before they got better. And it wasn't until I had the dark night of the soul where everything that could go wrong in my life totally went wrong. And I ended up in the emergency room and I heard a voice as clear as day that said, you need to be your own knight in shining armor and you need to save yourself. And I knew that didn't mean do it by myself because I'd done that before and that hadn't done shit. So I decided in that moment to get a therapist, get a coach, change who I spent time with, start doing things that I love to do, walk away from things that felt wrong. And I did. I traveled cross country by myself. I did all the things that I had put off and not done. And I started to really fall in love with my life. And I realized that I'd been settling for a really long time. I took full responsibility and accountability for my decisions that got me to the place that I was at. And I got to a place where I was so happy being single that I was totally fine with never getting married. I wanted to have kids. I wanted all those things. But I actually really allowed myself to let go and say, I'm just going to see where this takes me. But I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm not looking to settle down. I'm not looking for any of those things. And that's when I ended up finding a really cute musician who, when I walked into his house or his apartment for the first time, he had every self-help book that I also owned. And I was like, whoa, this is really cute. Really nice.
That's so odd.
Right? I was like, whoa, I love it. But because I was from this place, I told him, I'm like, I'm not even sure I want to be in a relationship. So just know, like, this might not go anywhere. I actually almost broke up with him a few times because I really just enjoyed my freedom that much. And he was like, I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. I don't want to date anybody else. But if you still want to date other people, I'm not going to stop you. And that freedom. And I was like, holy crap, this guy wants me to be me, and he's okay with me being me and not forcing me to do things that I don't want to do. Like, suddenly I was like, wow. So relationships, like, he wants to be in a relationship, but he's not forcing me to be anything. I'm not losing anything of myself to be with this person. I'd never been asked that before. I'd never been told, like, just be you and that's cool. It was like, just be you and then I'm going to give you a hard time for being you.
Yeah.
And so I had to give him a chance because I was like, this guy, is he too good to be true? Is he just saying what I want to hear? And in July, we'll be married for 10 years and now have 2 beautiful children.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Aw.
But because of all that, I really think I didn't think that I could create this. And so for me, this has been my passion, is to, if I can do it, then anybody else can. It's not magical. I'm not a guru. There's just some things that sometimes it's small things, but we can all create that, whatever we want for ourselves.
Amen to that. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And I echo your message. For me, it was, I left mine and it was like, screw you, I'm getting married. I don't know who I'm marrying, but, and like you said, I got back into Latin dancing and gardening, and I just, very similar to yourself. It's like, I need to love my life because it is exhausting not being yourself. And I found too, for you, did you have discomfort with that freedom to be yourself? Because I found for me, it's like, I didn't even know what to do with that. I didn't know who that was. Like, I know who I am and what I like, but even in early childhood, it's much easier to find out what the expectations are and then perform or behave. And this is the codependency thing we talk about. But how was that for you when he's like, be free to be yourself? And you're like, are you sure?
I actually share, so pretty early on, we had already been married and had kids, but I did notice, and I had already done a lot of work, but my sister called me up. I lived in New York. She lived in Colorado, and we started talking, and I was like, oh, I haven't really done a half marathon in a while. And she's like, yeah, neither have I. I was thinking about signing up for the bunny hop. And I'm like, yeah, I could bring the kids. And my husband, he was working like crazy hours at the time. So we literally made this whole plan. I might have even gotten the tickets. Like, I literally I went all out and planned this whole trip without a conversation at all with my husband. And I got off the phone and he was like, hey, in the future, can you just talk to me about making plans with our kids? And he's like, I'm cool with whatever you want to do. It'd be nice to be included in the conversation. And there was a little bit of like anger almost, of like, how dare you tell me what I can and can't do? There was that immediate feeling. And then I sat with it and I thought, okay, why am I feeling that way? And I thought about it. I was like, because with my ex, I would have been in trouble.
Yeah.
Even trying to think about that idea. So it was easier to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. I didn't want to ask for permission. And because he might say, no, you can't go do that. And so I came back and I said, hey, I just want you to know that I didn't ask. It was a subconscious thing, but I was afraid you were going to say no. And I just wanted to do it. I didn't want anyone to tell me what I could and couldn't do. And he's like, I would never tell you not to do something that you love. I just want to be in the conversation of the things that you're doing. And I was like, it's okay, cool. But it was this thing that I didn't know was still there, but it was this underlying, exactly what you're saying. It was weird. I can just still do that. There's still the freedom. You still have a conversation because it's your partner. But there was that weirdness that I still was holding on to because of what I had experienced before. That trauma, that little piece of trauma was still holding on. And it's beautiful to be able to let that go. Be like, I really can tell him anything and not be worried.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful to have the space where there's no anger, there's no blow up. It's not chaotic. He's communicating, hey, this would be good. And then we have our moment of like defensiveness or whatever it is. And then to have that space to go within and be aware of what that is and deal with that. And then come back and have this beautiful repair. They say rupture and repair, to have this, oh, hey, like I do see how it's weird compared to what maybe we're used to.
It is. And when I remember with my first husband, if there was something that we disagreed on, he would go right to yelling, screaming, cursing at me, threatening me. It would get bad really quickly. And when things would calm down, I would say to him, like, I just don't understand why we can't talk about things. Like, why can't we just talk about it? Why does it have to escalate so much? And his response was, you think that everything is lollipops and rainbows, and it's not. Other people in other relationships also fight like this.
Yeah.
You just think that they don't. And I'm here to tell you that's a load of bullshit because the toxic people do fight like that. He's right.
Yes.
But the healthy people do not. They would not disrespect each other. If my husband called me a bitch, I'd walk out the door.
Yep.
The conversation would be over and I'd be finding another place to live.
Yep.
You know, where it's like before my ex-husband's favorite comments to me, I was a cunt, bitch, whore. Those were his three favorite words because he knew that they bothered me the most and they were the most untrue about me. But now my husband would never, ever say those things to me. And he even says, I can't even imagine sitting there letting someone say that. I'm like, because this version of me wouldn't. But it doesn't start that way. It never starts that way. It's so slow. I always think of these toxic people like velociraptors. They're testing the boundaries. They're like testing out, what can I get away with? And so even though we might yell and scream and say, don't ever speak to me that way and say we're not accepting it, us being there is accepting it. It's allowing it to continue. And even though I would throw out my ex, I'd let him back in. And in his moments of clarity, he would say, every time you let me back in, I would lose more respect for you. He flat out told me that. And it's true. He did. And it was very obvious because then it was like my word meant less and less. Because even though I would tell him how angry I was and how I wasn't accepting it, I was, because he kept staying in my life. No matter what he did, I would keep taking him back.
Yeah. The name calling thing and same experience to the point that I tried to be like, maybe if I don't let it bother me, he'll stop, which is so backward. And then
it's that changing yourself. It's that, let me see how I can chameleon my way into not making him upset. Like what I'm saying or doing is upsetting him. So let me stop doing those things. And then you shrink yourself smaller and smaller.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when I started dating again after that relationship, I would tell people that. I would say, look, name calling is a no-go and it happens once. You might get one reminder conversation from me, but it happens again and I'm out. I don't care. And that was one of the first things I told my now husband was like, there's never going to be name calling. I'm not going to call you a name. And it's just it's unacceptable. It's verbal abuse. And something I saw too is that does lead to, depending on who you're dealing with, but largely like that is emotional abuse too. It can lead to physical. It generally does tend to incline. So
I agree. I think, and that's what it is. It's that testing. So if they can get away with calling you terrible names, then what's going to be the next step?
Yeah.
And so it tends to escalate. And when you look at, I heard another coach say this once, and I think it's such a great comparison, is when you look at abuse, it's like the levels of cancer. And stage 4 is physical abuse. So before it gets to that, you have the name calling and that kind of stuff. That might be on the lower end, but it does escalate. And obviously stage 4 could mean death. So once we've gotten to that point, because I'll have clients sometimes, and I thought this, is there a way to get things back to where they were? Can we fix this? Can we resolve this? Because we're problem solvers. And so is there a way to resolve this? I don't want to end the relationship. I want it to be the way it was when we first got together. We have these ideas of what we want relationships to be and what we saw the possibility of what that relationship was going to be. And so we want it to be okay. So there's that part of us is like, how can we make this okay? But realistically, stage 4 is the end. There's not much better. It's a very hard, in cancer, stage 4, it's very hard to recover from that. And same thing goes with abuse. Once you've gotten to that point, there really isn't any going back.
Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow when you're that trauma bonded and you obviously think you love this person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be accepting this kind of behavior. And so to think about having to walk away, it gets to this shelf breaking moment. And was there a moment like that for you that you knew it was done and you had to leave?
For me, I think it was one of those things where I kept looking. So my birthday's in December. It's also Christmas in the end of the year. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm 33 now. This has been this bad. Okay, it's 34. This is what I thought last year. When is this going to get any better? Is this going to be my life? And I just years were going on and I was like, I can't imagine living this way for the rest of my life. And then there were the thoughts of, would one of us die? really, would he die? Like, it'd be easier if he died, which was a terrible thought. And a lot of people think that. So if you're thinking that, I get it.
Yep.
But if he died, what if I die? Or what if, or almost worse was, what if we live this way for the next 50 years? Oh, and then that felt horrible. And then there was a thought of, is there more for me than this? And I would just remember going and so it was the end of the year, then it was February, and I was thinking, I'm like, I need to start coming up with a plan. And so I just reached out to one of my friends, and again, this was after physical abuse. He strangled me again. He spit on me. He would, all these terrible things. And it kept happening. So every time he'd promise it would never happen again. And I had a place that I would go to after work if I saw his car in the driveway that I called my crying place. Like, you shouldn't have that in a relationship. And so I remember going there and crying and looking at myself in the rearview mirror. And I was like, here I am again. And this doesn't change. This doesn't get better. Something has to change because I can't keep doing this. And I was actually also having health issues also. And so I reached out to a friend of mine and I said, actually, I think she said something to me first. And she said, I know things aren't great. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I want you to know that my couch is always available. And I said, okay, cool. And we had known each other for a really long time, but she didn't really know any of my situation at all. And I really didn't tell a lot of people. Most people did not know to the extent of what I was dealing with. Correct. And so it was just like a few weeks later. And I think I had gone out with friends, and my ex whenever I'd go out, he would let me go out, and he would call or text me a gazillion times and then threaten that if I didn't answer, he would come find me because I was cheating on him or whatever.
Of course.
And it's like, you wouldn't even have fun because you'd just be sitting there on your phone watching the whole time. Like, if I don't answer, he's going to come and find it. It's just going to be embarrassing. So I don't want to be in this situation. So I'd gone out with friends and he had done the same thing. And I thought, that's it. I just can't do this anymore. And so I reached out to my friend and I said, so what do you think about me coming and staying on your couch? And she just just show up and we'll figure it out. And so Cinco de Mayo was literally the day that I decided I am out and there's nothing he can say or do. This is not me going back this time. And I cried all the way through, and I went and stayed on my friend's couch. It was my house. I was the one who owned it. It was in my name. I left my dogs, even though he had threatened to kill them.
Oh my God.
But I said, I got to that point where I was like, I have to just save myself. And as much as I didn't think he would, because he really was an animal person. It was just, but what people do terrible things when they're angry and when they're vindictive. And that's a big reason why people stay, is the children and their pets and their house and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, if he burns down my house or he kills my pets or any of these things that he possibly could do, at least I'm out.
Yep.
And so I walked away knowing that maybe that could happen. But I hoped it didn't, but I did. And he tried to pull out all the stops. He did the nice guy, then the angry guy, and did all these different things to try to manipulate me back in, but there was no go. And I remember selling my wedding and engagement ring. And he liked to be fancy, even though I really couldn't afford it. Yeah. So he got me a really nice ring. I had really nice rings. And I just remember going to sell it because I wanted to give him the money so that he couldn't say he couldn't move out. I didn't want that to be an excuse. So I sold, and I cried all the way through because I just thought, this is really over. I'm really doing it this time. I was proud of myself and scared all at the same time. And I remember coming back with several $1,000s in my hand and giving it to him and saying, here you go. This is for you so that you can get a place. Because he kept saying he wasn't leaving the house because he didn't have the money. So here you go. Let me solve that problem for you. And so and this is actually a funny story. He had gotten me a Vitamix. And if you know this, it's a fancy blender for my birthday. I'd wanted one for a really long time. And he'd gotten me one for my birthday. So when I would stop in every once in a while to get stuff, I would try to do it when he wasn't there. Yeah. And one time he was hiding down the road because he was actually stalking me. And he would actually call, and we can talk about this too, but if he found out I was dating someone, and this is even after the divorce was final, he would find out who I was dating, call them at work and tell them I had an STD or that we were trying to fix our relationship.
Oh, Lord.
To scare off the men. But this was one of those times where he was hiding. And so I went to get some stuff out of my house and I grabbed my Vitamix, and he shows up and corners me. And I think, oh my gosh, because this was not the first time he had done that. And one other time he had tried to essay me when I was trying to get out of the house.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh God, why did I didn't think he was here? I would have called the police to come in and make sure that I was okay. And so literally had my arms full. I maneuvered my way through the house, got out the door, got in my car, and my heart was pounding in my chest as I turned on the ignition. He opens up the passenger door to try to grab the Vitamix. Wasn't even me. He was trying to grab the Vitamix. And I seriously, it was like a movie. I'm like, fuck this guy. Backed up. So I'm backed up. He's holding onto the car door. And I'm like, I'm going to run this guy over. Like, I am out of here.
Yeah.
I am so scared. I don't know what to do. And I got out. He let go of the car door and I slammed it and drove away. Got my Vitamix.
Oh my gosh.
Oh God. Yeah. But those were the kind of things is that he knew that was important. It was important to me. I made great smoothies every single day. I still have that thing. I've been divorced for 13 years. I still have it. It still works. It's amazing. But he was very good at doing really elaborate things and then ruining it and then saying I didn't appreciate anything that he did. Yeah. And that's a common thing that they do. It's actually something that they do a lot is they like to say that we don't appreciate the things. But if you do something nice, but you curse at me or tell me under your breath how terrible I am, or do all these other crazy things that they would do. We'd gone out once for my birthday, and then he woke me up at 3:00 in the morning and called the police because I smacked him in the face in my sleep.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, and I said to the police, I'm like, I'm sleeping. He just woke me up. And I said, he's got mental health issues. Luckily, they left and they made him leave. But the police being called for ridiculous things. And then I'm a goody two-shoes. And so to be threatened with the police coming was super embarrassing. I didn't want my neighbors to know and anyone else to know what I was dealing with. But yeah, it was always this manipulation of like, how can I get her to do the thing? So even after we got our divorce, he was still trying to be friendly. And at one point, he had hurt his knee and he was like, I need to come back and live in the house so you can take care of me. What? And I was like, absolutely not.
Wow.
Absolutely not. And for a little while, I was afraid that I was never going to find anyone again. And I remember telling one or two of my very close friends, I said, he's going to scare off everybody that is even a potential suitor. Yeah. And I remember one of my friends saying the right guy isn't going to be afraid of him. And at one point, I was dating this really good-looking rugby player.
Okay.
So, 6'4", muscular. And he was one of the ones that my ex called him at work. And he found out where he worked, called him and said, oh, Stephanie are getting back together, but you should know she has an STD. And so he called me up. He's like, well, guess who called me? And I was like, oh no, what did he say? And he's like, it's not that I'm afraid of him physically, because he was like, I don't know, 6 inches taller than him and way more buff and whatever. And he was like, it's not that I'm physically afraid of him, but these kind of people are scary. He's like, what if he came in and got me at work or tried to bring in a gun or did something else? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what's possible. And I think that kind of got into his head a bit. He was a little nervous. And again, all I'm thinking is this big buff dude is afraid of my ex. If this guy's afraid, nobody's ever going to want to date me because he would be the one that should be the least afraid. And he said, I'm not totally, but there's some stuff. Like, what if he ruins my job? What if I get fired because he keeps showing up and doing all these crazy things? And we ended that relationship. And when I did meet my now husband, so the ex-husband would drive by my house, especially if he saw a car he didn't know. And so he drove by the house. He saw a car, knocked on the door, and asked to come in. I told him no. And he said, I know someone slept over last night. And I was like, that's none of your business. So he left. And then he came back a few minutes later and threw this huge scene. And then actually, he was now my husband, my boyfriend at the time. And he's like, what do you want me to do? I'm like, just stay away. I'm not really sure what to do with this. Stay away. So then my ex proceeded to follow him as he left. Gosh. Yeah. And I was like, okay, he's going to scare off this one too. Like, this is going to be another one that scares up. And David, my husband, says, no, I'm not scared of him. I said, okay. And then a week or two later, my now husband and I had gone to Home Depot. And as I'm at Home Depot, the ex is texting me, I have to talk to you, probably knew exactly where he was and who I was with and all that kind of stuff. And he says, I'm going to show up at the house, and did the same kind of thing. And I was like, my heart's pounding. And I'm like, he's going to show up at the house. There's going to be a thing with my now boyfriend. I'm just worried about this whole scene going down. And my now husband and I would get back to the house, and in drives by my ex-husband. And as he gets out and my now husband is standing on the stoop and he's like, what should I do? I'm like, just stand there because I don't want to escalate anything. So I go to the car, I see my ex-husband, I talk to him, and he starts like yelling at me and like being really disrespectful. And my now husband comes over and just stands behind me and puts his hand on my shoulder. Like, that's it. He didn't say anything right away. My ex starts threatening him. You're not allowed in my neighborhood. If you come into my town again, my friends and I are going to beat the shit out of you. Like, ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And my now husband says, I have no beef with you. I have no problem with you, but I'm not going to stand by and listen to the way you're speaking to Stephanie. And so my ex-husband goes to unbuckle his seatbelt to get out of the car and cause this whole thing. And then he must have looked, because my husband is also taller than him and a bit more muscular. And he might probably looked at him one more time and put his seatbelt back in and drove off.
Oh my gosh.
But that he didn't really bother me anymore. He needed someone to be like, F you, this is not going to be okay. And I'm going to stand by my woman. And I just remember after that day, I was like, oh my God, someone finally stood up for me. Somebody finally stood up for me. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not afraid of him. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So amazing.
So there is. So if your friends are saying that somebody that loves you and is ready to be there, they're going to be there for you. It's 100% true. It is. As much as we might be afraid that they're going to, no, we can be real and honest and true to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that right person will still be there and love us for all of those things.
So beautiful. It's crazy. You've mentioned both strangulation and stalking, and that has been said to be the two most dangerous. Those are the two things that you don't. And the only reason I went to the police after I had left my situation was that because I didn't think I was being followed or stalked. I'm sure there was a tracker on the car, and my sisters said, no, I saw him drive by. He came to the baseball game. And I'm like, he doesn't even know I play baseball. Like, I saw it, right? So I texted his sister and said, I said, maybe it wasn't him, but there's no reason he should be coming around my family. This is inappropriate. And the response was, he had his own reasons to be in that area of town. I was like, oh, crap. Like, he did come here. That's when I was like, this is serious. And the next day I went to the police. And it's terrifying. And now I'm here in Southern California. So that happened in Canada, south of Toronto. When I got here, I don't put anything past him. He could come to Southern California. I don't know. And literally my now husband and his best friend just dead looked at me and were like, let him come. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And it was just the anxiety of when you've been followed for so long, or you just know how this person is. You don't know, like, you don't put anything past them. But
I moved from New York to Texas, and I'd already been divorced for a while and remarried and started having children, all that. But I just remember I didn't know that I had a little bit of anxiety about him driving by.
Yeah.
Until I got to Texas and I was like, oh, he doesn't know where I live. At least I don't think so. He actually found someone. So my married name is Charon. And so he found a Stephanie Charon who lives in Austin. And he contacted her and she reached out to me. I don't even remember how. I know how we contacted, actually. We contacted because there was a mess up with some credit cards. It was like the weirdest thing ever where we happened to connect. And I was like, oh, just so you know, my ex-husband might reach out to you. And a little while, she's like, oh, so guess what? Oh my God, thinking it was you. I was like, that is ridiculous. So I don't know, maybe he doesn't know I live where I live now, but I made sure that I am not exactly findable. Yeah, anywhere. I don't want him to know where I am. The people that we used to be friends with that he might still talk to, they don't even know my exact address, just for safety reasons. And again, I don't think so. But there is that amazing safety feeling of, oh, I know he's not gonna just drive by my house to just check in to see what I'm doing. It's that feeling of relief that I didn't know that I needed when I moved.
Yeah. And right after I dealt with the police and stuff, I headed out to Costa Rica for a retreat, and it was supposed to be 2 weeks. And the level of relief that you just mentioned that I felt in my body, and like I was rejuvenated instead of being this log in my parents' basement, like super lethargic. And for that reason, I was like, I'm canceling my flight. I'm staying here. I'd have to start over anyway back home. I might as well. And so stayed for 6 months. That's where I ended up meeting my now husband and who brought me here. But I feel for women who can't remove themselves and have that, because
like you're saying, like it's been what, over 10 years, did you say that you've been away?
Yeah, we got a divorce in 2012.
So 13 years, and there's still that like relief really about that it's so nice to be not worry about that, at least not on a daily level.
And so he didn't like it that I was sharing my story of what happened. And so when I wrote my first book, he went to a lawyer. And before I even wrote it, I went to my lawyer. I went to my divorce attorney and I said, okay, what's the deal? And they said, as long as you don't use the real names. So I made an opportunity to have his name be Richard. So I could basically call him a dick the entire
Dick. I love it.
The entire book. He tried to get me to cease and desist. And my lawyer is like, you're not really defaming him. You're just sharing your end of your side of the story. And so that didn't work. And several times I've gotten letters that have said, and actually he's like, I'm going to take you for all the money that you've got. You can't share this. And every time I speak to an attorney, they're like, there's really nothing he can do. It would take a lot of money and he still probably couldn't do anything because he's not famous. He's not losing money because of what you're saying. But the reason why he will once in a while still come back up and try to find me is because he's dated a few women. He's never been in a long-term relationship since mine. I think, in fact, it's only been a few months. He just hasn't been able to keep it up at all. He can't pretend as long as he did with me. Yeah. But the women will find out about me and then read my book.
Oh, boy.
Literally 5 of them reach out to me and say, hey, I just want you to know that I read your book. He's totally the same way. How fearful should I be for my children? How fearful should I be for me? But I also, I've come to the place too that when I spoke to my attorney last, they're like, you have to just, once those women tell you, you have to stop the conversation because then he finds out about it. And then I have to deal with him sending me a nasty gram or whatever. Yeah. I've literally had them join my Facebook community, find out information because they're wondering, like, because we all wonder, what am I doing that's making this person behave this way? Because a sane person wouldn't treat someone they love this way. Yeah. And so we're trying to figure out why. And then these women come across me and they're like, oh, so it's not necessarily me. This is what he's done for years. And I'm at a point in my life, I wish he would do better. I don't have any ill will. I want him to be happy and do something different. But you have to take responsibility for yourself in order to change and heal. Yeah. And so I did. I took that responsibility. I found myself. I discovered who I was and all those things and looked at the mistakes that I had kept repeating. But you have to take accountability for that. For him, it's still my fault that he can't get a woman to stay with him.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that he's aggressive, not that he is physically assaulting, none of those, disrespectful, none of those. It's all because of me. And so it's been 13 years since our divorce, and I'm sure that is still what he believes.
I am sure too. Yeah, of course. I can't believe where the time's going. I'm almost thinking we need a part 2 for this because I was so excited to talk about, and maybe we can cover it a bit now, but besides the seeing that your now husband would stand up for you, and it's so funny because mine's name is also David. I was laughing when you said that.
Nice. Is he bald also?
He is. He is. He looks like that. He has a beard.
I love it. I had never been into bald men until so one of the things I tell my clients is that you have to come up with that mental picture of what you want. So when I ended my relationship and I just took the time to do all of the things that I love to do. So I went to the concerts, I traveled cross country, I hung out with more positive people, I did all these things. But when I started dating, I call it dating for educational purposes. And so I thought, because I think as women we're taught, when you date, you've got to prove your worthiness to somebody else. You've got to show up and show that you need to be picked. It's that pick me behavior and attitude. I don't think we should do that. I think we should come from a place, of course I'm fucking awesome. Is this person worthy of me? Yep. As opposed to trying to prove our worthiness to somebody else. And so when you're going through that process, because you've already created this life that is filled with things that you love, with a life that you're excited to wake up to every day, and you truly have created that, you're much better at protecting that bubble, that bubble of happiness and joy and adventure and all of that. So when you are meeting people, you're more likely deciding, who am I allowing in that's going to add to this beautiful, wonderful life that I've created, not someone who's going to take away from it. And if somebody starts taking away, you're like, nah, not feeling that because I like this
Mhm.
happy feeling. So I'm going to end this relationship if it's not going well. And so I had started to look at, okay, I do want someone who is business oriented. I do want someone who's a musician. I do want someone, I even had the height. I had all these different things that I wanted. And after that rugby player, because he was a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And after him, I was like, okay, what am I missing? I'm missing something. And so
Mhm.
I re-looked at the list and I was like, you know what? Maybe I could date someone who's bald. And literally, it was literally because before that I was like, I like hair, like nice hair, like Jason Momoa hair, like whatever. And then, not that I dated much men that way, but it was one of those things like, maybe I could. And so literally, as soon as I said that, within a few weeks is when I met my now husband.
Wow. That's awesome. I love the clarity. That is also like I had a list, and actually I did have bald on my list because I just can't, like, I don't like when the hair gets unruly. Like it has to be like get a haircut every week because I like it to be clean. And I'm the same way with myself. Not, I have half my head shaved. So,
Nice.
so I was just like, bald guys just, they have to be trimmed. Like they take care of it. And I think that's hot. So it was actually on my list.
I know my husband, David, when he was in high school, before I ever met him, he had the rock star long hairstyle. And he's like, what would you think if I ever grew up my hair? I'm like, it wouldn't be you. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I don't like, it would be different. It's not, I like you bald. I can't imagine you not being bald.
Yep. I totally get you. That's so funny. I love that you said a mental picture of what you want. I completely agree. And like the values, like you like that he's into business and music, like it tells you something about the person. And the dating for educational purposes, as you're talking, I'm like, yep, I did that too. Every person I met, there's something that I have attracted that this person has. They're a mirror of me. So how am I being that I've attracted this person? So it'd have me look at myself, but also, yeah, with each person, it's, if it didn't work out, it's like, okay, why not? What what am I missing? What is it about? And I would further refine my list with every single person.
Yeah.
And then ultimately afterwards, like I'd have a conversation with myself and on a spiritual level and say, first of all, thank you for the protection. If it didn't work out, that just means that was not the one. And I'm so excited. If that guy was this good, I can't wait for the next one. And that's until I met my husband.
And that's the big thing is that I think because I thought I'd been told I was too much, or I was worried that my expectations were too high. What happened, I see a lot of people is they settle for someone who treats them okay.
Yeah.
So they went from like below sea level relationship, and then they meet someone that's like at sea level, and you're like, that's basic though. You don't want to be in a relationship with basic. You want to be in a relationship with someone where you like feel wonderful with, that you feel heard and seen and comforted and all these wonderful things that add to your life. But I don't think that we really can fathom that until we really create that life that we love. So then we say, hey, I can meet anyone that's going to, of course, I'm freaking awesome. People are going to be attracted to me, but to really truly feel that way, not to just say it, but to feel good and worthy of happiness and joy, and that we're not too much. We're not asking for too much. And when we start to realize that we've actually been settling for way too long, and we've been looking for projects, maybe subconsciously, because maybe we don't feel good enough, or because we feel like that's the only way we're going to be loved. Maybe that's all we've experienced. And if we're not giving, we're not worthy. And so when we start to realize that's not the case, and we start looking at how this person is adding, then we up level. So yeah, I think that that's really important, is to every encounter is to say, okay, what can I learn? What would be better than this? And to not settle until you find all of those things. And even at my David, I had said to myself, I don't want someone that has kids already. And there were a lot of people that were like, you're 36. The chances are pretty good that's going to not work out. And I said, unless they're older, I want someone who hasn't had that experience yet. And so when I met David and he didn't have kids and he had never been married, but he had left a long-term relationship, weirdly enough, around the same time that I left my long-term relationship, which we could talk about the spiritual significance of all that too. He left that and decided he needed to do some work on himself to figure out what he needed to do. And I said, wow, he doesn't have kids. He's got all these other things, and these other things that people said were not possible. That's also him too. And so for someone to say you can't have what you want, I disagree. I think that we can have those things. I think we've been told for too long that we can't, but that's not true.
That's beautiful. Oh, I'm so happy for you. So many times in our conversation, I've just had full body goosebumps, and
I could talk to you for hours. I feel like there's so much we can say. But in respecting your time today, let's talk about what you're up to now with sharing your journey. So you have a private Facebook group community called Divorce Support Network, guidance and community and resources, and also your website, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt. So people can go here for resources. Do you do coaching? What do you work on?
Yeah, I do. So actually, interestingly enough, if you would have told me 15 years ago that I would be helping women heal from their toxic relationships, I would have been like, yeah, right. And then if you would have said your husband is going to be helping you, I would have been like, you're on crack. Like, really? That's not possible. But that's what we do. So my husband is a Reiki master teacher. He is a Psych K facilitator. So he helps people with the subconscious belief change. So if those feelings of I'm not good enough, it's not possible for me to heal, he helps with those beliefs to make them more positive. So he helps with that part. I do the coaching where I look at where we've had those same patterns happen over and over again, and then come up with those plans. So whether it's a single session or we have a 12-week program or more VIP style, but we actually work together in helping people to heal. And I think it's a cool thing because for people that had been through this toxicity, to see literally the interaction between him and I, so that they can see what that relationship looks like, and to have that safety, because he is someone that can easily talk and feel comfortable. People feel comfortable talking to him. So to be like, oh, this man is safe, and to have that, to experience that, and to say, again, I don't need to settle anymore. I can find someone like David that I can feel safe and comfortable with. So we do that. We also have a podcast, which is Toxic Love Transformation. You can find me on all the social medias, Toxic Love Transformation, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, or just look up Stephanie McPhail. So we have all that access. And then we created Divorce Support Network, which is for people at every phase of divorce, whether they're thinking about it, going through it, or on the other side and healing, for them to get vetted professionals. Because in doing this now for the past 12 years, I've seen that people are not sure of who they can actually trust.
Yeah.
Not sure who they can actually trust when it comes to getting the right professionals. So we want to make sure that they're getting all the right professionals vetted for them so that they can make the right choices.
Yeah. And that's so valuable. I've shared a little bit in this series already that I had 2 therapists, one that I had to wait longer to book with, and one from BetterHelp, which I could talk to right away. And it was every week. But the difference was so huge because only one of them had known about narcissism and like the manipulative and the trauma bond. The other one was like, oh, how can you take responsibility for what happened? And I'm like, that's what I've been doing. This is the problem. And it feels not what the issue is. And so thank God for that counselor who knows the patterns and could make me feel so seen. And it's just so important, I think, to have vetted people who can do what is needed.
Yes, exactly. And I think in the years of me doing this, the landscape has changed, where when I started, there really weren't any coaches that helped with this at all. And now, so then I had years, and then I think 2020, people started to do their healing and look at themselves. So more people became coaches. And out of those, there were some amazing coaches, and there were some that still had a lot of work for themselves to be done that really they should probably pause. But when someone has a bad experience because the person is not really properly trained to do what they need to do, they sometimes don't trust. And they already don't trust themselves already because of what they've experienced, of all the trauma and everything else. So to really have a network where you're like, okay, I can choose any of these people, and as long as I get along well with them, things are going to be cool. Because that's really all it is. I don't care who you work with. Find someone that you feel comfortable with. Obviously, they know what they're doing. Find someone that you feel comfortable with so you can truly be raw and real and share all the things so they can help you get to where you want to be. I normally say find someone who's been where you are, but is where you want to be. And then that's the person to help you get there.
Yes. And that's why I so appreciate our conversation, because you are the embodiment of what I want to see for myself in 10 years, but also for all these people. Like, you can have it. And so thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing, your generous sharing, and also for the work that you do in your life. That's so powerful. So on Facebook, the Divorce Support Network, and yes, your website, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It was such a pleasure to interview you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And everyone who's listening, just again, you are worthy of more. Stop settling. And the more that you can put out, your best version of you, the better it is for the world. So go out there and be the best you.